Okay, I want to start with the conclusion. You, we, all of us become what we focus on, which means we are in a constant state of becoming. The choices that we make, the things we think about, the people we hang around with are constantly affecting who we are. The future is not written, and we do have a choice in it. Intentional, logical, purposeful, meaningful choice. That choice is manifested in what we think about and pay attention to, however. With that in mind, I now introduce to you Proverbs chapter 13, verses 21. That's the theme scripture. That's kind of what I quoted in the title. It says, "Misfortune pursues sinners, but prosperity rewards the righteous." This is not the type of Bible verse that I focused on for maybe the first decade of my walk with Christ. Yeah, I'm sure I saw this or came upon it, but I didn't really focus on this as a foundational truth for the very early decade of my walk with Christ. Instead, I gravitated toward those Bible verses that told me basically the bad have it good and the good always suffer. I don't know what it is. Something about that type of passage really resonates with me. I do think it resonates with lots of people. And I do kind of know what it is, but I don't know the psychological foundations of it. These following verses are the ones that I kind of always held on to. I'm sure some of them will be familiar to you. Jeremiah 12:1. "Why has the way of the wicked prospered? Why are all those who deal in treachery at ease?" That kind of resonates with me. Like, man, wicked people are really kicking butt in this world. Why are they so successful? Kind of mindset, you know? Job 21:7. "Why do the wicked live on, reach old age and grow mighty in power?" Right? This is the concept, I think, the good die young, you know? Which is not a biblical concept, but that's what I read into a verse like this. Malachi 3:15. "Now we count the arrogant happy. Evildoers not only prosper, but when they put God to the test, they escape." You know, it's like, is there only going to be afterlife retribution for these horribly wicked people? Are they just going to have this amazing life? You know, I gravitate toward that parable that Jesus told about this guy Lazarus and the rich man, you know. I cling to that, like, yeah, if you're going to follow Christ, you're going to be living in the gutter and you're going to be suffering, you know. And as a Christian, I worked alongside senior executives at some of the largest companies in the world, like Manpower, which was 52 when I worked in the 52 in the Fortune 100. Johnson Controls, which was a Fortune 72 company, or maybe 70. And then GE, back when I worked there, it was ranked 5. It was a Fortune 5 company. And I was around all these executives who were very wealthy and very successful. And I started noticing what kinds of cars they were driving around. One of my bosses constantly bragged to all of us how he had a $6,000 watch. Anytime he could, because he was in Stockholm, Sweden, my boss was in Stockholm, but we would have these video chats like this. He'd always get a chance to kind of put his hand up and scratch the back of his neck so we could all see that great watch of his. But I noticed the Michelin restaurants that they ate at. They talked about, and I listened to how they were renovating their homes with these massive upgrades, or these, 10,000 square foot homes they were buying. They had tailored suits, luxury shoes. And I was around it constantly. And it did affect me. I didn't just notice their success, I noticed my lack of it. It's like I started to see this gap, this, I can't think of the right word, but I couldn't get across the gap because things seemed to always go against me. I was overlooked or forgotten or ignored or underpaid or wasn't in as great a shape because I'm a disciple and devoted to the kingdom, I didn't have time to go to the gym like these guys did. I certainly wasn't as well dressed. I had this little tiny apartment. I remember this is on the east side of Milwaukee, overlooking Lake Michigan, the lower east side of Milwaukee. For those of you who know anything about Milwaukee, we can talk about that later if you're interested. A little tiny one-room apartment I lived in while working at Manpower. And I drove this dumpy car. Why would God allow me to fall so short when the ungodly were obviously prospering? And what happened is I became envious. Psalm 73:3 really did apply to me. For I was envious of the arrogant when I saw the prosperity of the wicked. That was me for a good chunk of my career, I think. Why, God, am I experiencing misfortune? Interestingly, the answer is found in Psalm chapter 73, which we're going to dive into right now. I do think it fits very nicely in this segment to walk through the whole thing. I do think you're going to find it very enlightening and meaningful. So I'm going to try to do it in a way that I think will add meaning. But Psalm 73 had the answer, and it was there the entire time. I just didn't gravitate toward it. I gravitated toward Psalm 73:3, but the rest of Psalm 73, I kind of missed. Here's how it starts. Truly, God is good to Israel, to those whose hearts are pure. We can all agree to that, right? And then he says, but as for me, I almost lost my footing. My feet were slipping and I was almost gone. So the author of this psalm, Asaph, is falling. He's losing his grip, so to speak, maybe his spiritual righteous grip. He was about to be lost. Even though he knew God does good for his people, he was about to go over the cliff. So I ask you, and this is rhetorical, why? Why was this happening to him? Why was he about to lose it all? Well, the answer is in Psalm 73:3, which I read a minute ago. For I envied the proud when I saw them prosper, despite their wickedness. It was envy that caused him to almost slip and fall. It was his mindset, if I may introduce that. Again, he was thinking about things that led him to a very destructive place. He was drifting away because of his mindset. His thinking led him to a destructive place. Misfortune. Misfortune was upon him, and he almost lost his footing. So, what was he focused on exactly that caused him to envy so much? The answer is also captured in Psalm 73. It's specifically in verses 4-12. So I'm going to read 4-12 right now, and we'll slow it down and maybe try to analyze a little bit of it. They, that's the wicked, the successful, the unrighteous, those that aren't following God, they seem to live such painless lives. Their bodies are so healthy and strong. They don't have troubles like other people. They're not plagued with problems like everyone else. They wear pride like a jeweled necklace and clothe themselves with cruelty. I mean, sounds maybe like some bosses that you've worked with, right? These fat cats, by the way, this is a New Living Translation. Any translation you read, you get really a powerful truth of this, but NLT, such common language, I wanted to read it. I just don't like that they put fat cats. That's like, what is that, a 60s thing? Can you dig it? You know, I wish they left that out. But it says in verse 7, he goes on to reflect on them. These fat cats, that people who are well-fed, so to speak, have everything their hearts could ever wish for. They scoff and speak only evil. In their pride, they seek to crush others. They boast against the very heavens, and their words strut throughout the earth. Their words do. Not just them, but their teaching, their philosophy. It just kind of works its way around the earth, their ideology. And so the people are dismayed and confused, drinking in all the words. Who are these people? the equivalent of you and me in those days, the common people. Hearing and watching them, we get dismayed. It confuses us. Like, how are they so successful? And yet we still continue to drink in all their words. Those people, the fat cats, right, the wicked, they ask, what does God know? Does the Most High even know what's happening? Look at these wicked people enjoying a life of ease while their riches multiply. I'm sure we can relate to this. It's very, I'll say, appealing to consider this. Like, maybe all of you are like, yeah, what's up with them, as I read this. But this author slipped into a mindset of envy, which almost pushed him over the edge because he focused on their success and their wealth and their good fortune. Isn't that profound? Then he focused on how bad things were for him in verses 13 and 14. He started to doubt. He questions his own decisions to follow God. Did I keep my heart pure for nothing? Did I keep myself innocent for no reason? I get nothing but trouble all day long. Every morning brings me pain. So think about this in terms of our career. Did I work with integrity and ethics for no reason? Nothing goes my way. It's almost like he's saying, every new work day is like a Monday. I basically, I go to work because he said, every morning brings me pain. Think of it from a work perspective where you dread and are maybe even nauseous, even thinking about going into work, when lots of other people are really succeeding around you. They seem to be so happy. They're chatty. They're taking time off. They're vacationing in, Bali, not you, not me. We're painfully working. So when we're there at that point, like I was in my career, like the psalmist is in his explanation, these first 14 passages, what do? We have the answer in Psalm 73, verse 15. It says, if I had really spoken this way to others, meaning what I'm telling myself inside, if I kind of verbalized it, I would have been a traitor to your people. That's amazing. If I just aired my negative thinking, what I think is unfair, I would have undermined the people of God. I would have put a stumbling block in their way. So in verse 16, I tried to understand why the wicked prosper. But what a difficult task it is. In fact, in verse 17, we see he realized very quickly, that's the wrong question, why the wicked prosper. Who can answer that? Basically, that's what he's saying in verse 16. And we see this proof in verse 17 because it says, then I went into your sanctuary, O God, and I finally understood the destiny of the wicked. I see this as a magic formula. If you want to write it on your wall, the magic formula to career success, Psalm 73, 15 through 17, you would not be doing bad in doing that. I like formulas. Nope, the Bible is not formulaic, so I use that kind of tongue-in-cheek. But the formula is this. Don't spread your negative attitude misery because it's only going to undermine Christians. Step one. Then, go down that path of striving to understand what's really happening. I think our brains do well by considering the pathway that we were considering. Then, and by the way, that second step kind of helps set us up for a mindset change because we're not going to find the answer there. And then step 3, because it's so hard finding the answer to step 2, we go to God. And it says sanctuary here, which I think is wonderful. We kneel before God's throne in our office floor, putting our forehead on the ground, our arms stretched out, and we say, God, I humbly surrender to you. In his holiness, in the prospect of his being, everything else kind of melts away. Then God gives us wisdom. We see this wisdom unfold in the rest of Psalm 73 after he describes this 3-step process, if I can call it that. Please forgive me for calling it a process. I hope you know what I mean. He says in 18 through 20, now that he's got this wisdom about really the wicked and what's really going on, he says, truly, meaning truth is, you put them on a slippery path and send them sliding over the cliff to destruction. So he was talking about himself slipping around and about to fall over the edge of the cliff, but he's like, really, the truth is, they are the ones that are on the slippery slope. In an instant, they are destroyed, completely swept away by terrors. That means in the land of the living, not in the great beyond. Instantly, they're swept away by terrors. When you arise, O Lord, you will laugh at their silly ideas as a person laughs at the dreams in the morning. I think of this, the foolishness of God, the wisdom of God is foolishness to the world, but the worldly wisdom is foolishness to God. Verse 21, then I realized my heart was bitter and I was all torn up inside. Revenge, envy, jealousy, all they do is hurt us. That is it. It gets us nowhere. In verse 22, I was so foolish and arrogant. I must have seemed like a senseless animal to you. Basically, he was reverting to a primal state, survival, because of what he was focused on. Yet, I still belong to you. You hold my right hand. You guide me with your counsel, leading me to a glorious destiny. Whom have I in heaven but you? I desire you more than anything on earth. My health may fail and my spirit may grow weak. He's not saying here, good people have bad health and, we suffer all. That's not what he's saying. He's like, worst case scenario. If my health failed and my spirit grew weak, God remains the strength of my heart. He is mine forever. Those who desert him will perish, for you destroy those who abandon you. But as for me, how good it is to be near God. I have made the sovereign Lord my shelter, and I will tell everyone about the wonderful things you do. What a great runway to success in our career. Ending in the last verse is, by the way, as I'm going and doing what I do in my work, I'm going to talk about how awesome you are. Psalm 73 lays before us this, I think, profound truth. Misfortune or prosperity. We get to choose which one we want. When we aren't on the right path, when our thinking is set in the wrong direction, that's horizontal, looking out at everything around us, beside us, surrounding us, we experience misfortune. When we're on the right path, when our thinking is set in the right direction, vertical, okay, it is really all about you, God. It's not about me. It's not about them. We experience prosperity. We can always go back to Psalm 73 and get a new perspective of our professional life. Whatever our career aspirations are, but also whatever our career situation, when we start thinking, man, everybody has got it so good. Misfortune is a direct manifestation of our thinking. Our thinking creates our feelings. Our feelings inform our choices, and our choices create our behaviors, and our behaviors create our outcomes. Misfortune is a mindset that is not in the right path. If we are thinking, man, everybody else has it so great, I don't, we are the sinner. And by sinner, I mean we're off the right path. Just like hamartia in the New Testament means you missed the mark. Although the misfortune word here is ra, it's evil, but the concept is still the same. We're not really in the right place. We're on the slippery slope. Let's go back to where our footing is sure. We see an amazing example of this in the story of King Saul in 1 Samuel. He was focused on the wrong things all the time, which were himself. He's the one who made the sacrifice instead of waiting for Samuel before going to battle and came up with an excuse. He's the one who made a big monument to himself. He's the one who murdered all the priests, only Abiathar escaped. He's the one who got envious of David's success on the battlefield because people were like, Saul has killed his thousands, but David has tens of thousands. And then he tried to pin David to the wall with a spear 2 times, right? What a great example of this: misfortune pursues the sinner, but prosperity is the reward of the righteous. Saul could have had a different mindset and realized how prosperous he was. I think he ruled for 40 years. I think that's the number. And yet, in his mindset, it was always misfortune. I see the same concept kind of inside the parable of the sower, which we know maybe is a parable of the soils. It's found in all 3 synoptic gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And this concept, I believe, is in the soil that had the thorns. Matthew, Mark, and Luke all start out with basically the same thing. Seed fell among thorns. This seed is this profound truth and wisdom of what is life, what is truly life. It fell among the thorns, and the thorns choked out the growth, the plants, because it did grow, but the thorns choked it out. The explanation of each of the 3, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, is only slightly different. In Matthew, it only mentions 2 negative behaviors. That's a focus on life's worry and money. Worry focus, money focus in Matthew. But in Mark and Luke, it's worry focus, money focus, and desire focus. The point is this: when we focus on these unrighteous things, we will be unfruitful. And the fruit is the fruit of the Spirit. Life will not be full of love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, self-control. I'm missing some in there, I'm sure. We'll feel the exact opposite. We'll feel the enviness and bitterness and jealousy. It gets to rage. It distances us from other people when we have the wrong focus. Jesus said that. And this parable is for the land of the living, not the afterlife, although it does apply. This guy named James Allen in 1902, maybe 1906, wrote a book called As a Man Thinketh. And this is he wrote a little tiny short poem. This doesn't sound like a poem, but it is, where he said, "Thought in the mind hath made us. What we are by thought, we wrought and built. If a man's mind hath evil thoughts, pain comes on him, as comes the wheel, the ox behind. If one endure in purity of thought, joy follows him as his own shadow, sure." If you've not heard of the book As a Man Thinketh, please go to LibriVox. I'm putting it on the screen right now, LibriVox.org. It's a free public domain, book domain. On the left, the green button, you can read a ton of free books. I mean, tens of thousands of free books. On the right, people have volunteered to read the books and record them and post them on LibriVox. So if you're like me and you're always busy, so you want to listen instead of reading, I listen to lots of books. Go to LibriVox and type in, as you see here, As a Man Thinketh, where the red arrow is pointing in the search bar. And you'll get 4 options for As a Man Thinketh. They're all the exact same book, but read by 4 different people. I will warn you now, all 4 of these voices drive me nuts. One of them sounds like Eeyore. If Eeyore was reading a book, it sounds like Eeyore. One's a British dude, I think one's a British woman, and I forget who the other one is. Sample each of the 4 so you can find out, okay, which of the audio versions is not going to drive me insane. And I know it's mostly me. Maybe all of them are fine for you. But then you can download this, plop it onto your phone, and listen to it like you would a podcast. The book that he wrote in 1906 is only 35 pages long. This book is going to take you 45 minutes to listen to, but it'll take you about a year to understand. It's profound. There is, sadly, one mention of Buddha here, which makes me want to vomit. But it's not like he's, propping up Buddha. But he wrote the book based on Psalm 27:2. For as a man thinketh, so he is. James Allen was a philosopher, okay, not a Christian. This book does give profound insight. I also recommend the book, The Energy Bus. I think I've mentioned this a few times on this call. The Energy Bus was written by John Gordon. That's right. I was thinking of another book. Sorry. John Gordon wrote this one. It's a parable. It's a modern day parable. Very short, but it's about a bus driver who's got a very infectious, positive attitude, and this one corporate guy who's negative, who thinks a cloud is following him around all the time, gets a flat tire and has to start taking a bus to work. Now, I don't know why they have an illustration of a school bus on the book cover. It's a city bus. It doesn't make any sense, but when you read the parable, this book, it's really profound about how to change your mindset and how a destructive, negative mindset changes your work life. It's really cool, very brief. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe for 2 new videos each week. Tell me in the comments below about your career situation, and I'll make a video for you with a shout out. You can also become a member at Motivationeer.com. Your career is not just a way to make a living, it's a way to transform the world.